So we now talked about variables, and variables are like boxes you can put pieces of data into. What we can also do is we can also add in something called an array. Now an array is kind of like an egg carton. You have an egg carton and it's full of, let's say, 6 or 12 eggs, and those are pieces of data here. So let's take a look at this. We'll call this sum string array here and make that equal to square brackets. Now let's just zoom in and let's take a look at this square bracket. If you ever see square brackets anywhere in coding, most of the time it means that it's an array. It's a series of data. Like an egg carton, it has multiple spots you can put pieces of data in here. So the best thing to do would be, for example, if we added in names, we could say John. We can add in something like Mark, and you can see that I'm adding in commas here, right? And this separates the array. We could call this Lucy, and one more, Sally. So we have 4 names here. Now, how would you print one of these names? Well, let's take a look at this sum string array. Now, if you look at this sum string array, if I zoom in, you'll see that it has these little square brackets around it. That signifies that it's an array. So if I click on that, it is an array. Now, if, for example, I want to print the 0, it'll print John here. Wait just a minute here. So in this case, we have 4 items in an array. And we have John, Mark, Lucy, and Sally. But we don't start counting from 1. We start counting from 0. And this is really important to understand. A lot of computers start counting from 0 instead of 1, which is called zero-based counting. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg has proposed that schools start teaching this to kids as early as kindergarten, or the first when the kids are around 5 or 6. I think it's kind of neat, and it's something that actually took me a long time to get used to. So teaching kids early is not a bad idea. So in this case, we have the 0. So if we print the first, or the 1, it'll print Mark. And if we print 3, it'll print the last one, which is indeed Sally. But what happens if we print 4? All right, and it says error. Now, let's take a look at this error. You will get this error a lot when you start coding. Execution was interrupted. And I love errors because they are so far from plain English, it's almost laughable. But in this case, what it's saying here is that you're asking this array to print something that's completely impossible, right? There is no 4 in this array here. We can add a 4. We could add something like, a name like Ian, right? And if we add an Ian, yeah, there is a 4th one, because remember, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then if we add in 5, we get that error again. We get that error that says that it is not there. And this will happen anytime there is some kind of data that is impossible to access. And if there's any reason that your code will crash, it's because of this here. So learning the errors is actually a very good productivity tool. So for the most part, that is what an array is, and you can store different items in there. Now, can you store something, for example, if I say some int array, and if I add in, for example, let's just do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If I add in some int array 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I wanted to print some int array, and you can see that it has those square brackets around it again, right? And I wanted to present the first one, it will print 1. Now watch what happens when I add in something like this. Okay, you can see that it still works, but the type, it's no longer an int array because we've added in these items here. So for example, if I just put that back to 5, remember you can go and, let's say, add in these other decimals, but now it's no longer an int array because integers are not numbers with decimals in it. Okay, so that is what an array is, and arrays are super important, and you'll see them everywhere. The main takeaway that you have to take away from this is that every time you see square brackets, those two square brackets like that, I'll just zoom into them because it's really important. Okay, every time you see those two square brackets like this, chances are it has something to do with an array. All right, this concludes the tutorial.